Good evening, Sri Lanka. The Omicron variant of the coronavirus is taking its toll, not just here in Sri Lanka, but across the globe, and things doesn't seem to be improving anytime soon. Economies are finding it very difficult to survive. A lot of people are finding it difficult with jobs being lost and all of that. We are going to talk about a very opportune topic tonight on law and order. So welcome to the show. We're going to talk about immigration and immigration here and the laws that govern the Sri Lankan territory and who lives and who comes into the country and so on and so forth. To do so with us, to give the experts' view on the whole topic, we do have with us attorney at law, Mr. Astika Devendra. Very good evening to you, Astika. Starting off, Astika, if I may ask, what's the law that actually governs this?
Yeah, it's basically the Immigration and Immigration Act, which has several amendments. As far as now, when you say immigration and immigration, the Sri Lankan law is governed by the Immigration Act, Immigration and Immigration Act. But that deals with Sri Lankans going out and them coming back in, as well as foreigners coming in and going back out. But when you take it as a whole, for the purpose of discussion, as Sri Lankans are concerned, I think it's important not to just look at our law, because just because you can leave from a country doesn't mean that you get accepted to a country. So though we are not experts of that, but I think when you look at immigration and immigration law which concerns the citizens of Sri Lanka, it not only deals with the country that you are in, that being Sri Lanka, it deals with the countries that you might want to visit or even migrate. So the whole of that would be the immigration and immigration law. Actually, since we are in a global village, all these laws which concern you actually are affected. You are affected by those.
True, and as you mentioned clearly, because it's a time where the Sri Lankan economy is trying to bounce back, and we are hoping that tourist inflows will be greater in 2022. On the other hand, you have we find that a lot of people have lost jobs and are now trying to find employment abroad and trying to migrate and all, so on and so forth. There's so much that actually relates to what we're going to talk about. So if I may ask, the current act that controls the Sri Lankan territories, there are certain exemptions also when it comes to who would get permission to walk into a country and who does not need to carry a certain, now if for instance a diplomatic actually go through as a layman.
Yeah, it's like this. First of all, when you take the act as a whole, when at the inception it says that it doesn't apply to certain types of people. I'm talking about the inward situation, that is the entry to the country. So it says it doesn't apply to armed forces, that is Sri Lankan armed forces. They can leave and come back at any time. And there are certain designated people who are from foreign missions, diplomats, persons from the UN, and there is something called the Colombo system, the Colombo Crame, that the people who come who are related to that institution, that system. So those people are exempted from this. That because most probably by the time this act was initiated or enacted, and subsequently, these were the things which were important at that time. But then, if you're talking about the types of passports, I think which we should get into later, there are certain types of passports which are given to different people, which has there are different categories and also different privileges for those people according to the passport they hold.
And say, basic question that someone would ask, to enter Sri Lanka, what do you need to carry?
You need, it's like this, the basic requirements are, as we know, if you are traveled abroad, especially to a first world country or a second world country, getting into those countries or getting visas are difficult. So as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, it is not that difficult. So if there are certain types of countries which would but those regulations according to the act has to be made by the minister. Now, for example, for the administration of the actation, you have the minister who is making regulations according to that. As you know, now when the legislature enacts an act, right? It's very difficult to foresee every situation that might arise. So, always in most of the acts, you allow the minister or some other authority to make regulations as it is needed, at the time it is needed. So here also regulations have to be made by the minister from time to time. Now, the basic requirements, it says that you can't, for example, who is a person who has a mental disability, right, cannot come into Sri Lanka. If you are recognized, and if a medical council or a medical practitioner who has been given that authority decides so, you can't come in. A person who is convicted in another country, not maybe a traffic offence, but certain types of offences, or if you are known to be a person who will who is to come to the country and sort of instigate or to provoke people against the government, or to try to topple the government. So there are certain types of categories. I don't believe that we need to go on one by one, but those types of people, and also people now, for example, during Corona time, we refused visa. We said we are closing our boundaries. So that also is a ground. For example, if a person is identified as a person who is carrying a disease, you have a right to prevent that person from coming. Those are the general guidelines. But on top of that, the minister from time to time can also regulate and say, in addition to those, these also are grounds. For example, a person who was a sympathizer of a let's say, for example, LTT. At that time, he can say, okay, if you were a sympathizer of such an organization, like we can prevent you from doing so. So basically, there are many types of persons who can be prevented from coming into the country.
So the role of the minister is that much greater. If you say, for instance, the ministers got the power to prevent a particular nationality coming into the country. Say, if you say a particular country has more corona cases than normal, you could say that particular country is restricted from visiting.
Yeah, very right, very correct. Firstly, you can have a regulation which covers this situation, and also the minister has been given the power. For example, let's say he want to prevent the X person from coming, from X person from Y country, that also the minister can do.
So the ability to take calls remains with the minister, and not with the Director General or anything like that.
No. It's like this. The minister is actually, normal legal system. Minister liaises with the cabinet and the department, Immigration and Immigration Department of Immigration and Immigration. The person who is in charge is the control of immigration and immigration. He is the administrator of that. The department runs under him. But the rules and regulations have to be made by the minister. But even though that power is given to the minister, what you have to know, Ishan, is that it will probably be on the advice of the control of immigration and immigration of the department.
So we're going to move into what we mentioned earlier about the types of visas that people would receive when it comes to wanting to go abroad, or for that matter coming into Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Now, we first will see about the visas that we need to come in Sri Lanka. For example, there is something called endorsement that basically applies to the people who come from ships, but that is not what you basically say a visa. Types of visas, okay, of course we have visit visa, that is several types, tourist visa, business visa, so on and so forth, and then there is residential visa. Residential visa, a person can come and say, okay, for example, if you are married to a Sri Lankan national, but you don't want to leave your nationality, or give that up, and especially in the situations that Sri Lanka is in, we had a difficulty, or Sri Lanka had stopped giving dual citizenship at point of time, so you might don't want to, for example, if you are a US national, you might not want to give that up. So then you ask for a residential visa, saying my husband is a Sri Lankan or my wife is a Sri Lankan. So these are the types of visas when it comes to Sri Lanka. But what you got to know is, if you are a foreign national, which this program is not meant for, but if you are a foreign national, for most of the countries, you get this ability, or you get this privilege of on arrival visa. That's the sense, like, you know, when we want to go to US or UK or what, any that type of country, we have to go to the embassy or the High Commissioner, apply for it, pay fees, and we have to go for a process. But for most of those countries, when their nationals are coming in, they can get the visa from Sri Lanka itself, as far as we are going out. Okay, now that differs from country to country, but the basic, I would say, the framework would be the same. Of course, you get tourist visa and business visa, that's a global phenomenon. And then you get student visas. Now, the difference is that why, then one could ask, okay, if you're getting a visa for 1 year, what's the purpose of categorizing it? One thing is, depending on the types of visa that you're asking, the information or the evidence that you have to provide differs. Now, for example, if you are going on a business visa, you have to show that you have business in that country, right? If you are going on a tourist visa, then you have to show that what your accommodations are, what the tours that you have put. So it streamlines the process. Otherwise, you have to, you know, it will be difficult for all parties concerned. Student visa, of course, and you have to show that you have enrolled in a university or a higher institute education, so on and so forth. Now, but then you get, for example, America and certain other countries have this green card system. That's a total different thing, which you don't find in European countries. So these are the type, the residential visa also. Now, for example, UK and the European countries, before you get citizenship, you get permanent residency. That is, if you are there for a long time, for a space of, let's say, 5-10 years, depending on the country, then you firstly get permanent residency, which then can be converted into a citizenship. So these are the basic types of visas generally that I have seen, which are found across the world.
And Asika, since you mentioned all of this, and these are common questions that a lot of people probably would have, because we find a lot of Sri Lankans going abroad under student visa, but then they try to find employment there or would try to do odd jobs and all, so on and so forth, probably over a period of time, and then they find themselves deported. What is the reason behind this?
No, the thing is this: when when a country gives you a visa, they expect you to be truthful, and that they are giving that visa for that purpose. Now, especially I've also gone out on a student visa, and then they have certain restrictions. They say, okay, you have to deposit this amount of money. They don't want, basically, if you're going to Europe or US, especially to a private university, they are expecting to make money, not that they want to, with their good graces, help us. So the idea is not for us to be employed now, because you have to appreciate this also. If they wanted employment, they have that also. I mean, they allow, if there is a lack of, let's say, engineers, then an engineer from Sri Lanka can apply and get, you can migrate. Those programs are also there. But the student visa, they don't want people to come as students in the pretext of a student and then try to get employment. That would be basically, but there are loopholes, of course. There are people who go there and then they file an employment. Now, for example, Europe, the problem would be because of the European Union, but that might be different for UK now because of the Brexit, is that, first of all, they might, if someone were to employ you after your studies, then they have to first show that there is no one in that country or the European Union who can fill that vacancy, and then only you can employ that person. So it's very difficult. So if you can't, they very rarely allow a student visa to be converted into another type of visa. That is the answer to your question.
So that's one reason I think a lot of people out there, and especially the students who are aspiring to go abroad and probably follow their higher studies, need to know when it comes to this kind of thing. Have you come across any of these as cases in the past, where a student who gets deported files?
Yeah, it's cases in the sense that now they don't file cases in Sri Lanka, so I have never come across as a lawyer. But as a student, I know I was studying with 4 guys from Sri Lanka. We were together. 3 of us came back, and 2 actually wanted to stay but couldn't. One actually managed to stay, he did see solicitors, and then he managed to stay. But other 2 who aspired to be there, they couldn't find employment, even though they were working with solicitor firms, so on and so forth. They couldn't find employment, they had to return back. So there are no cases as such, but I have seen the difficulties that they undergo when they want to convert the student visa into a visa that they can do employment. But under the student visa, which is also even part-time jobs, they say, you know, you can work only so many hours. So as you say, it's very important. I think it's very pertinent that you ask that question, that students should not live live with this dream that you can go to a particular country and make all that money and finish your education and also come back. So they must know this. That's true.
True. And if I may ask, a particular country's visa, for instance, a tourist visa, is there a particular minimum date limit or a maximum period that is a visa is issued for? If you take countries like US, you might find passport visas given for probably 1 to 5 years at a go. Is there a minimum period for that?
You are looking for tourist visa?
Yes.
Like any type of visa, business visa or whatever, is it? I think, Ishan, it differs from country to country, because I traveled to Canada 2 years back, and they gave me, I traveled for a business reason and I wanted visa for 30 days, I think, and then they gave me visa till the end, the expiry of my passport. So that is the way that they do it, you know, because what they think is, okay, if we are giving you the visa now and if you decide to go back, there is no harm in allowing you to come back. So, but for US, if you ask for 1 month, they give you only for 1 month, but of course that can be extended.
So there is no particular...
No. That differs from country to country.
So if you take the current situation here in Sri Lanka, a lot of people are looking at moving out because as I mentioned, the economy is not so great, people have lost jobs. What is the kind of advice from a legal point of view that you would give someone who's wanting to go abroad looking for employment?
Yeah. First thing is, first of all, it's a very complicated question and depends on your age also. Now, there are a lot of people who are around my age, like if I consider myself middle age, then proper people who are in our age groups, so who have like, you know, teenage children or 10-15 year old children who are looking to migrate. So then, if for those people, you must ensure that your employment secured, and if you are not a skilled employee, I rarely recommend it, because it's very difficult for you to travel with your family, and if you don't travel with your family, and then it will be very difficult for you to get your family there also. For most of at this point of time now, we've got to understand, Ishan, now these countries also, even though they might be a little better off than us, would also have a problem of retrenchment. They are also looking at letting people go, and so their employment market is also in a bit of a stress, right? I mean, they are also facing that issue. So they might not be looking at taking people from our countries for general purposes, unless they identify a particular group of people. For example, I know a person who went for when lawyers and doctors were finding it difficult to go to New Zealand. He was a qualified air condition air condition technician, but for that they have a requirement. For people like truck drivers, they have a requirement. So first thing is, you must be educated, informed about the requirements to go into that country, and identify it. Just because someone says, okay, there you can go to that country or this country, you should never do that, because I see a lot of people who are pressurized into going, or who are given this dream, finally end up losing a lot of money and also time. For example, if you lose 5 years of your life trying to get into that country, trying to get visa, and then you have to come back, that is a lot. Sometimes it might be a lot more damaging than actually losing money.
And that's another point that I want to ask us, because we've seen people who say, I've spent $500,000, I've spent 1 million rupees on this particular job, I've spent even more at times trying to get visas to go abroad. How practical is it? Because we know that there is a system, there's an embassy that you need to go to and get yourself sorted out and all of that. So why do people actually have to spend so much money?
No, firstly, it's like this. Now, none of these embassies or foreign missions have agents. So, anybody who's advertising that we are helping you to go to New Zealand or US or UK or whatnot, they are not agents. But I'm not saying that they are useless or they are fraudsters. I'm not saying that. Sometimes, even though all of this material are online, there are not loopholes, but there are ways in which you can have an advantage over another to get in to a particular country. First thing is, you must be informed of the system, but then of course people can help you. What people misunderstand, and sometimes now I have seen situations where the person who is providing this service of assisting a person going abroad, may it be student visa or otherwise, is not a fraudster. He actually tells these people, look, I am not giving you a visa. I am just helping you fill the visa application, and I am telling you these are the material that you need. If your father must have this deposit, okay, so you get the money from someone and put it into the bank and so on. Right? It's not a fraud, but it's deception. But you give that guidance, and they may prefer the application, spend the money. Sometimes if it's a student visa, you have to give a deposit to the university, and you give something to this person for visa application, processing of the visa application, gets rejected. So the person who assisted this person is not a fraudster. He can never guarantee a visa unless you are the High Commissioner or someone who's deciding on the visa. You can't guarantee. But unfortunately, people also are misguided, and with their wishful thinking, they think, okay, now once this is done, I can get the visa. And secondly, there are in fact fraudsters who actually tell people, look, don't worry, once you do this, you get the visa. So that is what you have to be careful. You need to ask him, look, you are generally, anyway they can't give the visa, you have to get a visa from him. But what is the service that he is providing, and weigh in whether with the service that he is providing, what you are giving is whether it's in balance.
And that's something that we're going to talk about more about, rather, with regards to what really happens when it comes to immigration and immigration, because visas and agents and embassies, and not that Sri Lanka has all the embassies here in Sri Lanka. Some of the countries are not represented here in Sri Lanka. So that's a topic that we need to talk about once we move on to the next show. But got to thank Astika for being with us and sharing its expertise with regards to what really happens, what's the act that controls, and what type of people are allowed to walk in and go abroad, and what you need to keep in mind when it comes to especially looking for employment, or if you want to go abroad looking to get yourself the higher education that you desire, because that's an avenue a lot of people have looked at going abroad. But then, as Astika clearly mentioned, if you carry a student visa, the chances of you having to return to the country is that much more greater, probably as good as probably 90-95% of the time. Isn't it, Astika?
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. It's time for us to say goodbyes on today's edition. Please make sure that you tune in to the next edition, because we will continue the discussion on this particular subject on immigration and immigration, with regards to what controls and how you could go abroad, and what sort of employment is available, and what sort of things that you need to do, and so on and so forth with regards to the particular subject. It's time for us to say goodbyes on today's edition. See you same time, same place next week as well. It's bye-bye from us. Passport would get entry without having to go through the hassle that we use.